we'll talk about, you can say, trend in fiscal deficit. Okay, so if you see trend in fiscal deficit, so actually we have to achieve 3% of GDP as fiscal deficit in 2008-9. So when your FRBM Act was introduced in 2003, which we started implementing from 2004, so target has been given this, but unfortunately we are not able to achieve this target in 2008-9 because of subprime crisis. Okay, subprime lending crisis, and because of this subprime lending crisis, okay, because of this subprime lending crisis, clear? Okay, clear? So because of this subprime lending crisis, okay, our fiscal deficit target is not achieved. Now we change the target, or you can say we keep the same target, 3% of GDP. Now we decided to achieve in 2014 the same target, that is 3% of GDP. Again we are not able to achieve it. The reason is very simple, because you know that this is a time period when our country is facing the burden of high inflation because crude oil prices get increased, plus there were so many scams also. So whenever corruption is there, it means very less tax collection will be there. So ultimately that is also another reason. Okay, now we again change the target and we kept the new target, that is 2018. Now again we are not able to achieve the 3% by this time period. Why? Because we introduced demonetization and GST reform, a major reform. So it has disturbed our economy that time period. Now again this target was further extended, and the new target that we have to achieve in 2021. Now this time we have changed the target deadline also. So it, rather than 3%, it has become, you can say, 4.5%. So in this target 2021 we have to achieve it, but unfortunately again we have not achieved it. The reason is that because of this, you can say, because of, you can say, COVID or pandemic, this target is not achieved. Now due to COVID, our fiscal deficit, okay, due to COVID, our fiscal deficit has touched 9% of GDP. Now government says it is very difficult to bring from 9 to 3%. So government says we'll bring it gradually. So in 22-23, government bring it to 6.4%. In 23-24, this is the current one which is running, government bring it to 5.8%. Now for the next year, that is by 31st March, you can say 31st March 2025, we will bring it to 5.1%, and gradually further next year we will bring it to 4.5%. So this is our target. So in this way we are now planning to bring it to this way. Clear? So this is what you have to remember. Okay. Now one student is asking, so there are so many doubts, so I'll just take one by one. So sir, according to this, debt would have been reduced compared to GDP, as you said, but in, see what I told about, NK Singh was set up in 2016, which he gave recommendation in 2017. So he talked about in 2016 our general debt was 68%, so he want to bring it to 60%. So government started reducing it, but unfortunately COVID was there, and due to that government has to take lot of borrowing. So during that time, government of India as well as state government has to take the borrowing, and during that time it touched 84%. So our general debt right now is around 84%, or you remember approximately 80%. Now again we try to reduce it to 60%. But when we'll reduce it, that we don't know. So again you have to wait for the, you can say, you have to stay or read the newspaper. Clear? Clear? Now sir, recently there is, yes, I'll cover that effective revenue in this. Okay. Sir, recently it was in news that IMF in its report predicted that under worst circumstances, debt of Indian government is likely to become 100%. That is, see, yes, they talked about general debt. Okay, so if you read that news of IMF, which talks about public debt, general debt, so in that they talk about all the debts, but their focus was on general debt basically. See, one student is saying that, sir, you mentioned scam, but CAG apology. See, that is not apology. They basically they said that that is a presumptive loss. Presumptive loss means the thing you can sell at 10 rupees, but you have sold at 8 rupees. That is what presumptive loss. So it means you receive 8 rupees, but you can receive more also. This is called presumptive loss. Clear? Clear? So this is what. Okay. So this is what you have to remember with respect to this thing. Okay. Now this is about your, you can say, trend part. Okay. Now before we end, I would like to just ask you that if suppose you have to reduce fiscal deficit, how you will reduce it? If you have to reduce fiscal deficit, how you will reduce it? Okay, so whenever you have to reduce fiscal deficit, your answer will be that you will reduce expenditure on one side, and on the other side you will increase receipts. Then only you will reduce the fiscal deficit. Okay, then only you can reduce the fiscal deficit. Okay, on one side you will reduce the expenditure. Okay, and on other side you will increase the receipts. So for example, whatever unnecessary expenditure is there, you will reduce it. For example, if you are paying more subsidies, you will reduce your subsidy bill by some ways. For example, like LPG cylinder. So earlier subsidy are given on LPG cylinder on unlimited cylinders, but now we introduced PEHL scheme and it is reduced. So this way you will reduce your expenditure. Similarly, you will collect more taxes. So nowadays you can see that enforcement directorate is behind the people, and they are catching those people, those who have, or you can say they are trying to increase the receipts. So if they black money and all those things, they are catching it, black money, money laundering. So ultimately they are trying to increase the receipts. So ultimately expenditure you will reduce, receipts you will increase, and ultimately this gap of borrowing will further reduce. This gap of borrowing will further reduce, and ultimately you will say that we have achieved fiscal deficit. Okay, and when you are trying to do this thing, we also call this term fiscal discipline. So fiscal discipline means, the term fiscal discipline means you are reducing your expenditure and increasing your receipts. Okay, so the term discipline means that you are decreasing your expenditure and increasing your receipts. Okay, so this is called fiscal discipline. Okay, now this you can do when your economy does not have any crisis or not facing any crisis. But if suppose economy faces any crisis, like in terms of in 2008 we faces subprime lending crisis. So that time government has given fiscal stimulus. Okay, so fiscal stimulus is opposite of fiscal discipline. Okay, and this will be given, fiscal stimulus is opposite of, you can say, fiscal discipline. It means here we will increase our expenditure deliberately and reduce our receipts, that is by giving tax benefit to the people. Okay, so this is opposite of fiscal discipline, but fiscal stimulus will be given only whenever there is any crisis. For example, in 2008, that is 2008-9, we have subprime lending crisis, and that time government has given fiscal stimulus. Clear?